Today on Applied Science, I'd like to show you this specialized camera system that's designed to take video of arc welding and other super bright processes in detail like you've never seen before. This system is made by Crontech, the makers of the Chronos high-speed camera, and they sent me this model, of course, to get some footage of arc welding. But I found a couple other interesting applications like laser cutting and also stroboscopic capture that's really well suited to how this system is built. So let me show you what this thing does to overpower the light of an arc and also the other applications that I found for it. If you've done any arc welding or especially tried to video it, you know that getting a correct exposure is actually not the difficult part. Even though the arc is extremely bright, we have filters that are extremely dark, and we can also use a very short shutter and close down the camera's aperture, and we can always adjust things so that the arc is properly exposed. It's not overexposed. The problem is that once the arc is in proper exposure, everything else is too dark to see anything. And even worse than that, even within the arc's area, the lighting is so unnatural that it's really impossible to see any surface detail because the arc is just providing light from all angles. If we want to actually see good surface detail, the lighting needs to come in from a natural angle to make shadows and actually see what the shape of the object is or what the surface is like. And so this system is designed to overpower the arc, literally outshine the arc, and it does this through two ways. One, the lighting that we're using is narrowband, so these are 450 nanometer royal blue LEDs, and most of the light comes out, at that wavelength. And then the camera has a notch filter. It looks like a mirror, but it's transparent to just the wavelength that these LEDs are outputting, so that even though the arc is broadband, it's white light, we're only going to take a tiny sliver of that to get through the spectral filter. So this filtering system means that the camera is especially sensitive to these LED lights and much less sensitive to natural forms of light that are broadband. And then in addition to that, these LEDs are pulsed and they're synchronized with the shutter in the camera. And what that lets us do is pulse the LEDs to a super high brightness, about 1 kilowatt for this array of lighting, but it's a very brief pulse, only when the shutter of the camera is open. Again, that lets us give more sensitivity to our own lighting and less sensitivity to the natural light of the arc, which is spread out over all time. Let me give you a sense of how bright these LEDs are. I've activated the water cooling system that comes with these LEDs and cranked up the brightness so that it's at maximum pulse power. But I don't need any special eye protection to look at this because the duty cycle is so low. The pulse length is only about 10 microseconds currently. That's the shutter time, exposure time, and the frame rate is 1,000. So that means that the duty cycle is maybe 1/100th. But that means that these LEDs are actually 100 times brighter than they appear because it's pulsed like that. So if I lean in and just put a piece of black plastic in front of the LEDs, listen to this. You hear that? That is pretty crazy. There's so much light coming out of these LEDs that just putting like a thin piece of black plastic in front of them causes the plastic to make a noise because it's, thermally expanding due to the energy coming out of these LEDs. But the pulse is so brief and so intense that you can actually hear the frequency that the LEDs are being pulsed at because the plastic is vibrating at that frequency because it's, absorbing so much energy and expanding. Very strange effect. I've never encountered anything like this with any other lighting system that I've used. And I can't really show you how bright the pulse is because there's no real way for a camera to show that through YouTube. But the fact that it's so bright that you can hear how bright the light is, I thought was pretty funny. All right, let's see some welding. I'm going to start off with some mild steel. This is DC TIG welding, and I'm using a foot pedal. It's otherwise constant current. And the setup is pretty basic. I'm using a 3/32 electrode here and a clear glass cup, which I would recommend playing with if you are a welder. They actually are pretty useful. And you can see how this is moving. I'm using a 308 stainless welding rod, but it's pretty funny to see how the metal flows around like it's putty or gelatin or something. It's just very strange that you see so much detail in the puddle. This is what the arc startup looks like on my system. There's a couple of brief flashes and you can see it flicker before the main arc starts. And again, I'm using the pedal so that we start off at lower power and then scale up the power as the puddle grows. And you can also see right at the startup there's a blast of gas that comes out of the cup there. You can see the surface is really rusty and dirty, and it's just sort of blowing all that loose dirt away. Here we can see the pulse feature on my system. This is still 1/8 inch steel with the 308 fill rod and 332nd electrode. And I'm using the pulse function slow enough so that I can obviously see the high and low power pulses. And if you look, you can see the puddle growing and shrinking in accordance with how much power is going in. And then, of course, you can see the rod coming in here and melting. And also how much dirt there is in there. I should have actually cleaned up the surface of this steel, but all of that dirt that's on the puddle, I think, is coming from the surface of the steel. Okay, now we've switched to AC welding on aluminum, and you can see that the polarity is switching back and forth, and when it's in the weld polarity, most of the heat is going into the base metal, and when it's in the clean polarity, you can see the surface of the aluminum is being etched off there, which is why AC welding is needed for aluminum. You can even see the cleaning action happening on the fill rod. This is 4043 fill rod, same 332nd electrode as I was using in all the others. I did some stick welding too, and I really liked the look of this one. At least with TIG welding, I guess it's more common to look at what you're doing very carefully through the hood. With arc welding or stick welding, I don't know, it's just more of a chaotic process, and it's kind of nice to see in detail what's actually going on in there. Like, how does the metal actually transfer from the electrode to the weld puddle? These were all captured at around 1,000 frames a second, and I just love the detail where you can see in the puddle how much activity is going on and how much more vicious the puddle stirring is with stick welding compared to TIG welding. I also got some footage of plasma cutting, and one thing I was able to use this camera to help diagnose the problems I was having is adjusting the air pressure of the torch. I was surprised that with higher air pressure, the arc is actually less hot. I mean, I guess that makes sense. There's more air blowing this plasma out of the torch than there is with lower air pressure. But I could see in the video, I mean, you can actually see the plasma there. There is some luminosity, even though you can see through it. And by adjusting the air pressure up and down, I made the arc or the plasma plume brighter or less bright. So you can kind of figure out how hot of a plasma plume you need to get your job done. I got some footage of a strip of magnesium metal burning. This stuff is famous for burning with a super, super bright white light. And you can actually see the flame, which is pretty neat. And you can also see the front where the magnesium is melting and igniting, and the flame is sort of enveloping it there. I also tried doing this underwater. Everyone always talks about burning magnesium underwater, and it just visually wasn't that exciting, although I was able to capture some footage of the bubbles and everything coming out of this burning magnesium strip underwater. Here's some footage of nitrocellulose paper, flash paper burning. And I love the detail you can get with this microscope lens that comes with the camera. You can even see that little fibers some of them are burning completely, and some of them are actually turning black, becoming carbon because they weren't fully nitrated. Pretty neat. I really liked how this footage came out too. It's just a plain old matchstick, but just the way that it burns sort of quickly at first, and then I'm going to speed up the video and you can see how the flame front moves down through the wood of the match. Let's move over to the laser cutter, and another thing that Crontech provides is white LEDs, and so you can also collect footage in color with that pulsed LED. You don't get the spectral filtering, of course, because it's white light, but you can still do the pulsed LED trick and get really good exposures without completely blowing up your subject with light, because it's still pulsed, has that low duty cycle. I was especially interested in capturing footage from the laser cutter that goes back to one of my earlier videos where I was showing ceramic and quartz cutting underwater. And at the time I was getting some high-speed footage of it, but it was too hard to tell what was going on because it was so bright. Now that I've got this great system, it's amazing when technology catches up to you. I have a great way of visualizing what was actually going on in those cut regions on ceramic and quartz pieces. I also got some footage of plywood being cut because it's so heterogeneous. You can see like different parts of the plywood, you know, carbonizing and burning at different rates. It's a little tough to see, but we're zoomed way in on the kerf into a piece of aluminum oxide where the laser beam is cutting along and the laser is cutting away from us and we're looking at the kerf. And you can see there's definitely some cavitation going on, like the bubbles are moving towards and away from the cut zone, and there's obviously a lot of steam coming out too where the water is boiling in the kerf. But I feel like it's a lot of evidence here that the cavitation is actually an important part of how this thing is cutting the ceramic. I mean, it's getting hot enough where I don't think it's going to vaporize the ceramic directly. I think that potentially one of the ways this mechanism is working is that the heat from the laser, you know, obviously heats up the aluminum oxide, and then the water rushes in. It's the force of the cavitation bubbles hitting it that actually blows out the chunks of the ceramic. And there's also quite a lot of nearby heating. In fact, you can even see a zone around the kerf where the thing is boiling. And so the water provides an important cooling function, but I think it's also cavitation that helps this thing cut so cleanly. And now for something completely different. You know, while I had this stroboscopic system where I've got this really fast pulsed light, I thought of some other interesting things we could look at with this. So these quartz crystals are everywhere. This is a 32 kilohertz quartz tuning fork oscillator that's in basically every wristwatch out there, and, you know, tons and tons of other electronic devices. And they're actually easier to open up than you might think. I just grabbed this thing with a drill chuck and then very carefully went in with a Dremel cutoff wheel and just sliced open the metal case. Now, the amount of vibration that we're seeing here is pretty exaggerated. I mean, it's real. I'm putting about 20 volts peak to peak into this tuning fork, when in reality, in a wristwatch, it's going to have, you know, 1.5 at most on it for sure. But it's not breaking. It's still able to oscillate properly even at 20 volts peak to peak. Now, the trick here is that we have to pick a frame rate for the camera and the strobing lights that is very close to 32 kilohertz, 32.768 kilohertz. If it's just some random frame rate, like let's just say it's 1,000 frames per second, then the frequency will appear to be much higher. What we really need to do is find a multiple or a divisor of 32.768 that's pretty close. And one of the other nice features about the Chronos camera is that you can input a frame rate to it. So as long as you're operating at a frame rate that's lower than maximum for that particular screen resolution, we can control the camera's frame rate from the function generator that's also giving the oscillation signal to the tuning fork itself. So we can even adjust how much speed we want to be apparent from the function generator. All of the shots that you saw in this video were made with this macro lens that comes with the system. And it also comes with all of this mounting hardware. One of these magic arms that you basically just lock down at one position and then the whole thing is locked in place. Both of these are really useful to getting those tight arc shots. And the lighting is similarly on these lockable arms. And so you can loosen one of these and move it into any orientation and then lock it down. I also had this idea of sort of making the inverse of this system optically. So if this has a bandpass filter only letting in 450 nanometer light, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have another high-speed camera, another Chronos, that has the opposite of this. So in other words, a notch filter to keep out the 450 nanometer light. That way I could get simultaneous video of the special illumination and the natural illumination. And this didn't really work out that well. I mean, it worked optically, but just, you know, visually, it wasn't that impactful. I took apart a Thorlabs filter and added it to one of these C-mount holders. And so I had a lens that was basically blind to all of the 450 nanometer light. I actually ended up using a long pass filter, so everything in there looks kind of green. I could see certain applications, very specialized, where you'd need to collect simultaneous video, one with the special lighting and one with as much natural lighting as possible. But at least for the welding and the, you know, plasma cutting and things that I was doing, it really didn't add that much to it. You could just basically collect separate footage. It didn't have to be collected at the same time, basically. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting. And if you have any suggestions of stuff you'd like me to video with this system, put it in the comments and I'll make a follow-up video at some point. Okay, see you next time. Bye.